Hello there, this is Elena again, and today we're continuing our videos about Russian annexation of Crimea in 2014, and we will talk a little bit longer about what happened, when it happened, and how it all happened. Let's dive into it. This is ex-president at the time of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych. After months of Euromaidan protests in Ukraine, which ended with the shooting of protesters by riot police units, the Berkut, President Viktor Yanukovych fled the country. And so was many Ukraine top officials. They fled the country as well. State authorities effectively stopped working, waiting for directives from the parliament. Ukraine stepped into a short period of political uncertainty. There was no new president elected yet. This man, Alexander Turchinov, served as acting president of Ukraine from the removal from power of President Viktor Yanukovych on 22nd of February 2014 until Petro Poroshenko was sworn in as a Ukrainian president on June 7th, 2014. So Ukraine didn't even have a president at the time, elected president. And Russia immediately took advantage of it by sending its troops into Crimea and then by invading Donbass. So you will have no doubts what happened. It was a regular Russian army. And this man, his name is Vadim Skibitsky, a representative of main intelligence of Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. That's what he has to say. He said that Russian occupation forces included troops from various army branches at the time. The occupation of Crimea, as he said, took place in 3 stages, and more than 70,000 Russian security officials took part in it. Now the direct quote of Mr. Skibitsky. The total number of law enforcement agencies that were deployed at the time in the southern military district was 73,000 people. Of these, 12,000 military personnel, the rest are employees of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the FSB, the Ministry of Emergency Situations, and other law enforcement agencies. In reality, it was this group that was used to carrying out the occupation and annexation of Crimea, he said. And the military element included not only those Russian soldiers who were already in Ukraine, under the SOFA agreement between Russia and Ukraine, on stationing of the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation on the territory of Ukraine. The first stage of the occupation of Crimea was the use of special forces on February 20th, 28th, 2014. The second stage lasted from 2nd to 10th March 2014. The Crimean grouping of Russian troops were brought to the highest degree of combat readiness. Also, during this period, the land border of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea was blocked and company strongholds were established in the areas of Perikop, Armyansk, and Chongar. This is a piece of video with Simon Ostrovsky from Vice News. This is near Chongar. The sign said Chongar. Dangerous mines. Look at that. Chongar, Kherson region, Ukraine. So Chongar, it's not even Crimea. It's a region of Kherson. As you can see, there is already a border and there are mines there.
A week ago, this was just a highway between one podunk town in Ukraine and another.
This is Mr. Ostrovsky. The reason I'm showing it to you is because I also saw in several different private videos made by telephones and this and whatever they had at the time, cameras. It's not just only one place where I saw. This border actually was built before the referendum in Crimea. So it was happened several days before. They started to build this border and put mines on the border between Ukraine and Crimea, which is also Ukraine, but only Russia took it from Ukraine. It's kind of, imagine if, let's say, Canada attacked the United States, grabbed themselves the state of Montana or Washington, and started to build the border between the state of Washington or Montana and the United States. And then on the gunpoint, they would force and fake referendum that state of Washington or Montana would love to be Canada. And after that fake referendum, they would say, well, now if you attack this territory, United States, to take it back, you attacking Canada, and Canada is nuclear country, gonna nuke you now. So this is what I saw. This exact border was built, and Mr. Skibitsky confirmed that it was built before the referendum. He said from 2nd to 10th of March, and the referendum was on March 16th. The third stage of the occupation of the peninsula lasted from 10th to 18th of March, according to Mr. Skibitsky. During this period, a joint command post was deployed at the Gvardeyskaya airfield, an advanced command post of the Jankoy area. In addition, more than 7,000 military personnel, primarily paratroopers and special forces, were concentrated in Crimea. They were transferred to the territory of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea by sea and air, and so on. In late February 2014, Russia started massive illegal deployment of its military units to the territory of Crimea by sea, air, and land. And the war with Ukraine started on February 20th, 2014. One of the proofs of it, the Russian medal for return of Crimea, which clearly stated 20th of February 2014 and 18th of March 2014. And I will show you more information from Inform Napalm and some other sources. For example, this is the people who was awarded with this medal, like Viktor Ivanov. And it clearly stated for their taking part in annexation of Crimea. This is his, he's from descent troops and from Pskov. This man also received this kind of medal. His name is Evgeny Sergeyevich Korchanov. And he is, it's a mercenary, believe it or not, from Kuban Cossacks. He's a Cossack. And mercenaries are illegal in Russian Federation, by the way, by the law. This is another man, Nikolai Petrovich Melnikov, 15th Rocket Brigade, from Sevastopol. And so many of them. Landing ships concentrated in the Crimea, according to Skibitsky, made possible to carry out an amphibious landing operations along the entire Black Sea coast of Ukraine. Some of Russian servicemen came by land. Also, they would travel by roads from Russian Federation through Kharkiv and the highway which going from Kharkiv to Simferopol. And they were disguised as Cossacks and civilians, these people. From the sea transportation, Russia used both navy and civil vessels, and there are lots of pictures Russian troops on the different vessels. And Russia deployed landing platform docks like Nikolai Filchenkov, Kaliningrad, Minsk, and so on, Azov, Saratov, and many others. Other vessels of similar size. Even it was difficult to track civilian vessels, but nevertheless, the Inform Napalm did track them down and so on. And they were transported from different places, like from the Yeisk city to Ukraine and so on. And also Russian military men were also airlifted to Crimea, especially from like Anapa. We will see it in some videos very soon. Here was about lots of big planes, Il-76. The permanent representative of the President of Ukraine in Crimea, Sergei Kunitsyn, reported that by March 2nd, 13 Il-76 transport planes with Russian paratroopers had arrived in Crimea. In addition to airplanes, the Kremlin also wildly used helicopters Mi-8 and Mi-24 to deliver the troops. This video made by the Russian Radio Liberty and its Crimea Reality, how Russia occupied Crimea, and as witnesses they used Ukrainian military men.
Под присягой рассказал командующий военно-морских сил Украины Сергей Гайдук.
This is Sergei Gaiduk. He was the chief of Ukrainian Navy, and he said to the court in this case, under the oath, who was attacking Crimea, which kind of units.
Прятался за названием «Зеленые человечки», ему докладывала разведка.
The intelligence told him who was hiding behind the little green man, so-called.
Мы смогли их идентифицировать как военнослужащих
We could identify them as a military men from
810-й бригады
810 Brigade
морской пехоты Черноморского флота России.
of Black Sea Fleet Infantry of Russia.
Это подразделение дислоцируется в Севастополе. До аннексии Крыма морпехи участвовали во Второй российско-чеченской войне.
This unit was located in Sevastopol on a military base. And before that, they were taking part in the Chechen War, Second Chechen War in Chechnya.
Сейчас воюют в Сирии.
And at the time of the video was made, they was already in Syria. So we will talk more about a little bit of investigations of this company of Inform Napalm. This is also one of the people who awarded with the medal of capturing Crimea, participation in annexation of Crimea, from 18th Motorized Rifle Brigade. This man is Devetilov Dmitry Vladimirovich, and so on. So the group Inform Napalm, I'm highly recommending their site. They did a huge job in many different languages. They provided information about the annexation of Crimea. And this was about identifying of servicemen of this 417th battalion, the war criminals who attacked Crimea. This is also a very interesting investigation. I'll talk to you a little bit about that later. They pointing out very important facts that, for instance, Ukrainian activists, I presume, from Ukrainian Cyber Alliance, UCA, obtained unique data about Crimea military invasion participants and gave exclusive access to Inform Napalm volunteer community to analyze the files. Inform Napalm verified that data through open sources intelligence and made a report about the Russian military operation in Crimea. And according to investigation done by Inform Napalm, and this particular investigation, for instance, about 1,097 men of 18th Brigade who occupied Crimea, and according to my own resources, the invasion of Crimea was hybrid occupation. What's that mean? They explain very well here, and I will help you to understand. Because it involved both regular military units of the Russian Federation and paramilitary groups, consisting mainly of the representatives of Russian Cossacks movement from different regions of Russia. As we saw just now in the video I showed, that there was Cossack even awarded the medal for occupation and annexation of Crimea. Paramilitary associations formed the backbone of the armed groups of so-called Crimean Self-Defense, which took an active part in blocking and seizing administrative buildings and other facilities in Crimea. And so-called Crimean Self-Defense militants, they played supporting role. Basically, the bulk of the tasks to seize Ukrainian army military units and communications was performed by regular troops of the Russian army. In this situation, Russian army played three roles. First of all, they acted in the crowds, disguised as civilians. And we can see it here. how Ukrainian Berkut officer from Russian Ulyanovsk city, basically, assaulted Crimean parliament back in 2014. So apparently, as Putin was saying and some other Russian authorities, there was self-defense and it was about Crimean people doing something. This is not true. Do you remember famous Russian paratrooper Nikolai Kozlov, who lost his legs in Donbass? This man. And they're showing also that many of the people, Cossacks and stuff like that, I'll show you some video footage a little later, they were dressed up as civilians. The second part, the second role what Russian army played, they operated disguised in uniform of Ukrainian police units. So this man, he was 21 years old, trained as a car repair specialist, served in the 31st Separate Airborne Assault Brigade military unit until June 2013. And later he was serving by a contract. And this is on this picture. He is standing in militia or police Ukrainian uniform. And so on. You're welcome to read the whole investigation on that and so on and find out more about that. And the third role Russian army performed as in the uniform without insignia, full combat uniforms and gear, but they didn't have insignia, they just was wearing balaclavas and stuff like that. This is how Ukrainian officers in this video didn't allow Russians to take some weapons and stuff like that from their military base. So these are green men, little green men.
Нет, это моя машина, блядь. Машина части, блядь, БТР, государственная.
The Ukrainians saying it's this BTR equipment machine is belong to Ukrainian government and he's not gonna give it to them. So this is how they will look like. The secrecy was used to create the illusion of a popular uprising in Crimea that would demonstrate to the rest of the world image, not true image, of the confrontation between the civilian population of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and representatives of the central government in the region. And we, as the world, was supposed to see the rebellion of a local population against imaginary ethnic discrimination and the struggle for uniting back with Russia and their brothers from Russia. And we as international community was supposed to see it and either approve it or just don't interfere. So, and this is Russian troops, like portrayed by Vice News, and I want you to look at them very closely. Like, look at the armor, look at how they dressed, look at the weapons and so on. Like, no one civilian in Russia or Ukraine or any ex-Soviet country has any kind of ammunition or clothes or body armor or anything like that. In fact, at the time I knew that something like that was provided to Russian army from Germany, and they will get some brand new uniforms and stuff like that. That's where the Wagner group was, that's where all the mercenaries and Russian army and so on. Those troops played 3 different roles, as I said. They invaded Crimea in the big amounts with military, with tanks, with whole bunch of equipment, and in a massive amounts. That was the invasion. And these are the proofs what they providing. So they investigated open sources resources. So this is Russia, Kalinovskaya to Krasnodar, and many of them just posted their videos and pictures on different places. This guy is on the ferry from there was no bridge at the time. They dressed up in uniforms, they dressed up warmly enough, and if you read the article you will see all the proofs about about how they proved that the Russian troops by the ferries get from Russia to Ukraine. This is how they get by the sea in Port Krim. And the picture showing them on the ferry and on the ground. And next picture will show you the Ukrainian sign about Crimea. This is it, Ukraine, Crimea, and Ukrainian flag. So it was at the time before the annexation. So this is how it was happening. This is at Port Krim. After that, they moved to Kerch. It's a city in Crimea and so on. And Feodosia in the next city. This is all Crimea. And there was no bridge in there. Later, they proving that by the pictures on certain BTR machine and in the same machines on the roads of Crimea in Ukraine. So Russian equipment and Russian military came to the Jankoy I was talking to you about, and by the pictures from social networks, and this is that BTR machine with the guy who we see on the road and stuff like that. So basically, that's how it was proven who came where and how they get there. This is Voinka. It's a place where they had a refueling station and stuff like that, and they were located there for a while. It's also proven in the article I'm showing you, and you're welcome to read it yourself. And direct quote. At the time, the entire power bloc of the southern and eastern regions of Ukraine, including Crimea, was completely neutralized, Skibitsky said. He stressed that at the same time, the Ukrainian army was in difficult conditions, which didn't have powerful groups in the eastern regions of the country, and the military units located there were armed with Soviet-era equipment, basically old equipment. Skibitsky noted that the plan of the Russian leadership was to provoke Ukraine to use the armed forces in Crimea against the civilian population and units of Russian troops, which would allow Russia to launch a full-scale aggression in response. By having annexed the Ukrainian Crimea, Russia violated hundreds of treaties with Ukraine and international ones. And by doing so, Russia confirmed that it is an aggressor state. Russia had claimed this status in the past by attacking Chechnya and Georgia.